The small town of Oakhaven sat quietly in a valley surrounded by tall, green hills. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else. The baker knew when the teacher woke up, and the teacher knew when the farmer planted his corn. Life in Oakhaven moved slowly, like a river that never rushed. The sun rose over the eastern hill every morning, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Then it set behind the western trees, leaving the world in a soft blue twilight. For as long as anyone could remember, nothing exciting had ever happened in Oakhaven. The days were the same, and the nights were even quieter. People liked it this way. They felt safe. They felt comfortable. But deep down, in the heart of the town, something was waiting to change. In the center of Oakhaven stood an old library. It was a large building made of gray stone with tall windows that looked out onto the main street. Inside, the air always smelled of old paper and dust. Rows and rows of wooden shelves held thousands of books. Some books were thick and heavy, while others were thin and fragile. Most people in the town rarely visited the library anymore. They had televisions and computers at home. They got their news from screens, not from pages. The only person who spent time in the library was a young man named Leo. Leo was 22 years old. He had messy brown hair and kind eyes that always seemed to be looking for something. He worked as the assistant librarian, though there was not much work to do. His job was mostly to dust the shelves and make sure the books stayed in order. Leo loved stories. While other young people in Oakhaven dreamed of buying fast cars or moving to big cities, Leo dreamed of adventures he read about in books. He read about brave knights fighting dragons, clever detectives solving mysteries, and explorers finding lost cities. He wished his life could be like that. But in Oakhaven, the biggest event of the year was the Autumn Harvest Festival, where people ate pie and watched fireworks. Leo often sat by the window in the library, watching the rain fall on the cobblestone street. He wondered if there was more to the world than just this quiet town. He wondered if there were secrets hidden in the hills or mysteries buried under the ground. Sometimes he felt a strange tingling sensation, as if the air around him was humming with energy. He tried to ignore it, telling himself it was just his imagination running wild. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, the library was completely empty. The sound of rain tapping against the glass was the only noise in the room. Leo was organizing a section of books in the back corner, a place where very few people ever went. This section contained old local history books and documents from hundreds of years ago. As he pulled a heavy leather-bound book from the bottom shelf, he noticed something unusual. Behind the book, there was a small gap in the wall. It was dark and looked like a tiny hole. Leo frowned. He had worked in this library for 3 years, and he had never seen that hole before. Curiosity pulled at him. He reached out his hand and touched the edge of the hole. It felt cold, colder than the rest of the room. Leo decided to investigate. He grabbed a small flashlight from his desk and shined it into the gap. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing that the hole was actually the edge of a small door. It was painted the same color as the wall, which is why no one had noticed it. There was no handle, only a small keyhole shaped like a star. Leo's heart began to beat faster. He looked around the empty library to make sure no one was watching. Of course, no one was there. He thought about calling the mayor or the town sheriff, but something told him not to. This felt like a secret meant for him to find. He remembered seeing an old box of keys in the basement earlier that week. The head librarian, Mrs. Gable, had asked him to sort through them because she was retiring soon. Leo ran down to the basement. The air downstairs was cool and smelled of earth. He found the box of rusty keys on an old table. There were dozens of them, all different shapes and sizes. He took the box upstairs and sat on the floor in front of the hidden door. One by one, he tried the keys in the star-shaped lock. The first key was too big. The second key was too small. The third did not fit at all. Time seemed to slow down. The rain outside pounded harder against the windows. Thunder rumbled in the distance, shaking the floor slightly. Leo felt a mix of fear and excitement. What if the door led to nothing? What if it led to something dangerous? He couldn't stop now. He had come too far. After trying 10 keys, he picked up a small silver key with a strange symbol engraved on it. The symbol looked like a swirling wind. When he inserted the key into the lock, it fit perfectly. It slid in smoothly, as if it had been waiting for this moment for 100 years. Leo turned the key gently. There was a soft click, followed by a low, grinding sound. Dust fell from the top of the doorframe. Slowly, the small door began to swing open. It didn't creak, it moved silently, gliding on invisible hinges. Leo held his breath. He raised his flashlight and peered inside. He expected to see a small closet, or perhaps a storage space for old files. Instead, he saw a narrow staircase spiraling downward into deep darkness. The steps were made of smooth white stone that seemed to glow faintly in the beam of his light. The air coming from the stairs was fresh and warm, smelling of flowers and ozone, unlike the dusty air of the library. Leo stood up and brushed the dust off his jeans. His hands were shaking slightly. He knew he should close the door and forget he ever found it. That was the sensible thing to do. That's what anyone in Oakhaven would do. But Leo was not like everyone else. He wanted to know what was down there. He wanted to know why a secret door existed in the town library. Taking a deep breath, Leo stepped on the first stair. The stone felt solid under his feet. He began to walk down, counting the steps as he went. 1, 2, 3. The light from the library above grew dimmer until it disappeared completely. Now the only light came from his flashlight and the faint glow of the stairs themselves. As he descended, the walls changed. The rough stone of the library foundation gave way to smooth walls covered in strange carvings. The carvings depicted scenes of stars, moons, and people flying through the sky. Leo stopped to look at one. It showed a group of people standing around a glowing tree, holding hands. They looked happy and peaceful. He wondered who had made these drawings and why they were hidden underground. He continued down the spiral staircase for what felt like a long time. The air grew warmer and sweeter. The sound of the rain above faded away, replaced by a soft humming noise. It sounded like music, but without any instruments. It was a natural sound, like the wind singing through a canyon. Finally, the stairs ended. Leo stood at the bottom, facing a large archway. Beyond the arch, a bright golden light filled the space. He shielded his eyes for a moment before stepping forward. As he passed through the arch, his jaw dropped in amazement. He was no longer in a tunnel or a cave. He was standing in a vast underground garden. The ceiling was high and curved, covered in crystals that sparkled like stars. In the center of the garden stood the glowing tree from the carving. Its leaves were silver, and its fruit shimmered with colors that Leo had never seen before. Small streams of clear water flowed through the garden, feeding patches of vibrant flowers. Butterflies with wings made of light fluttered around the trees. It was beautiful beyond words. It felt like a dream, but the ground beneath his feet was real, and the scent of the flowers was strong and sweet. Leo walked slowly toward the glowing tree. He felt a sense of peace wash over him, a feeling he had never experienced in his life. All his worries about his boring job and his quiet town melted away. Here in this hidden place, everything felt possible. He reached out to touch the trunk of the tree. The bark was warm and pulsed gently like a heartbeat. As soon as his fingers made contact, a voice spoke. It didn't come from anywhere specific. It seemed to come from the air itself. "Welcome, Leo," the voice said. It was soft and kind, like the voice of an old friend. "We have been waiting for you." Leo jumped in surprise. "Who is there?" he asked, looking around the empty garden. "I am the guardian, and you are the keeper. You have found the heart of Oakhaven." Leo was confused. "I don't understand. I'm just a librarian. I dust books and organize shelves. I'm not the keeper of anything." The voice chuckled softly. "That is what you think," it said, "but your heart has always known the truth. You love stories because you are part of a greater story. This garden is the source of life for your town. It keeps the hills green, the water clean, and the people safe. But lately, the garden has been growing weak. The light is fading. That is why you were drawn here today." Leo looked again at the glowing tree. Now that the voice mentioned it, he could see that some of the silver leaves were turning gray. The light from the crystals on the ceiling was not as bright as it should be. A sense of urgency filled him. "What can I do?" he asked. "How can I help?" The guardian's voice became serious. "The old shadow is waking up. It seeks to drain the life from this garden and spread darkness over Oakhaven. Only the Keeper can stop it. You must journey to the 3 sacred places marked on the map within the tree. You must restore the light to each place before the shadow consumes everything." A panel on the tree trunk slid open, revealing a rolled-up piece of parchment. Leo took it and unrolled it. It was a map of the area around Oakhaven, but it showed things that were not on any normal map. There were symbols marking a cave in the northern mountains, a lake in the eastern forest, and a ruin in... Leo climbed the spiral staircase until he reached the small hidden door in the library wall. His legs felt heavy, but his mind was racing with thoughts of the glowing garden and the blue lantern in his hand. He stepped back into the dusty room of the library. The rain was still falling outside, tapping against the windows just as it had before. To anyone else, nothing had changed. The world looked exactly the same. But Leo knew that everything was different now. He was no longer just a librarian who dusted shelves. He was the Keeper, and he had a mission to save his town. He quickly pushed the secret door shut. It clicked softly, blending perfectly back into the wall so that no one could tell it was there. He hid the silver key in his pocket and held the blue lantern close to his side. The flame inside did not flicker or go out, even though there was no wind. It burned with a steady, cool light that seemed to push away the shadows in the corners of the room. Leo knew he had to leave Oakhaven soon. The Guardian had said the shadow was waking up and time was short. But first he needed to prepare. He could not just walk out of town without a plan. People would ask questions. His friends would wonder where he was going. He decided to tell a small lie to keep them safe. If people knew about the danger, they might panic or try to stop him. He walked to his small desk and grabbed a large backpack. He packed it with things he thought he would need: a thick coat, a bottle of water, some bread and cheese from his lunch, a rope, and his favorite notebook. He also took a compass, although he suspected the map from the tree would be more useful than any normal tool. As he packed, he looked around the library one last time. He loved this place. It had been his home for years. He hoped he would come back to it someday, safe and sound. Before leaving, Leo wrote a note to Mrs. Gable, the head librarian. He told her that he had to take care of a family emergency and would be gone for a few days. He knew she would understand because she was a kind woman who always put family first. He left the note on her desk and turned off the lights. The library became dark, except for the soft blue glow of his lantern. Leo locked the front door and stepped out into the rainy street. The town of Oakhaven was quiet. Most people were inside their warm houses, eating dinner or watching television. The streetlights cast long yellow reflections on the wet cobblestones. Leo pulled his hood up over his head to hide the blue light of his lantern. He did not want anyone to see it yet. He walked quickly toward the edge of town, heading north. According to the map in his pocket, the first sacred place was a cave high in the northern mountains. As Leo walked away from the center of town, the houses became smaller and farther apart. Soon he was walking on a dirt path that led into the woods. The trees here were tall and old, their branches twisting together overhead like a roof. The rain made the leaves drip water onto his shoulders. The forest was dark, much darker than the town. Normally, Leo would have been afraid to walk alone in the woods at night. He would have imagined monsters hiding behind every tree. But tonight, he felt different. The blue lantern in his hand gave him a sense of courage. The light seemed to talk to him, not with words, but with feelings. It made him feel calm and focused. When he passed a patch of deep shadow between the trees, the lantern grew brighter, pushing the darkness back. Leo realized that the shadow the Guardian spoke of was already here. It was creeping into the edges of the forest, trying to spread. He walked for an hour, following the path as it began to slope upward. The air grew colder, and the rain turned into a light mist. Leo stopped to check his map. The parchment glowed faintly in the dark, showing a red dot that moved as he moved. It pointed toward a steep trail that wound up the side of the mountain. This trail was not used often. Only hunters and brave hikers ever went this way. Leo took a deep breath and started to climb. The ground was slippery with mud and wet leaves. He had to use his hands to grab onto roots and rocks to pull himself up. His muscles began to ache and his breathing became heavy, but he did not stop. He thought about the gray leaves on the glowing tree in the underground garden. He thought about the neighbors sleeping peacefully in their beds, unaware of the danger. That thought gave him strength. After climbing for a long time, Leo reached a flat area near the base of a large cliff. Here, the entrance to the cave was hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines. The map indicated that this was the right place, but as Leo approached, he felt a chill run down his spine. The air around the cave entrance felt wrong. It was unnaturally cold, colder than the rest of the mountain. The vines were brown and dead, unlike the green life he had seen lower down. A thick black fog swirled around the opening of the cave. It looked like smoke, but it moved on its own, twisting and turning like a living thing. This was the shadow. It was guarding the cave. Leo stopped a few feet away. He raised his blue lantern. The blue light hit the black fog, and the fog hissed. It recoiled slightly, pulling back from the light. The shadow did not like the lantern. Leo knew he had to enter the cave to restore the light, but the shadow was blocking his way. He remembered the guardian's words, "Trust your heart." He closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. He thought about why he was doing this. He was not doing it for fame or glory. He was doing it to protect his home. He loved Oakhaven. He loved the smell of the baker's bread, the sound of the school bell, and the sight of the hills in the morning. That love was powerful. When he opened his eyes, the blue flame in his lantern flared up, becoming twice as bright. The light was no longer just a small glow. It was a beam that cut through the darkness. Leo stepped forward. "Move," he said firmly to the shadow. His voice shook a little, but it was loud enough. The black fog surged forward, trying to surround him. It felt like icy hands grabbing at his clothes. Leo held the lantern out in front of him. "You cannot have this place." He walked straight into the fog. The cold was intense, biting at his skin. For a moment he felt very small and weak. Doubts crept into his mind. What if he failed? What if the shadow was too strong? But then he remembered the warmth of the underground garden. He remembered the promise he made to the guardian. He pushed those doubts away. He focused all his energy on the lantern. The blue flame expanded, forming a bubble around him. The black fog touched the edge of the bubble and sizzled. Slowly, the shadow began to dissolve. It could not stand against the pure light of the lantern fueled by Leo's courage. With a final hiss, the black fog vanished. The air around the cave entrance became clear again. The dead vines seemed to perk up slightly, turning a little less brown. Leo lowered the lantern, panting heavily. His heart was beating fast, but he felt triumphant. He had faced the shadow and won. Now he had to go inside. He stepped through the vines and entered the cave. Inside it was pitch black. The walls were rough and jagged. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing loudly in the silence. Leo switched on his regular flashlight as well, just to be sure, but he kept the blue lantern held high. The map in his pocket grew warm. He pulled it out. The red dot was now right in front of him, deeper in the cave. Leo walked deeper into the earth. The tunnel narrowed, forcing him to walk sideways in some spots. After 10 minutes, the tunnel opened up into a large cavern. In the center of the cavern stood a stone pedestal. On top of the pedestal sat a crystal orb, but it was dull and gray. It looked like a cloudy piece of glass with no life in it. This was the source of light for the northern part of the land. The shadow had drained its power. Leo approached the pedestal slowly. The air in the cavern was still cold, but not as bad as outside. He placed his hand on the gray orb. It felt freezing, like touching a block of ice. "I am here to help," Leo whispered. He lifted the blue lantern and held it close to the orb. At first, nothing happened. Leo frowned. Was he doing something wrong? Then he remembered the carvings in the underground garden. They showed people holding hands and sharing energy. Maybe the lantern was not enough on its own. Maybe he had to give something of himself. He closed his eyes and thought of his happiest memories. He thought of the day he got his first library card. He thought of the time he helped a lost dog find its owner. He thought of the feeling of reading a good book under a warm blanket. He poured those feelings into his hand, imagining them flowing from his heart, through his arm, and into the orb. At the same time, he let the blue light from the lantern touch the crystal. Suddenly, a spark jumped from the lantern to the orb. The gray color began to crack and fade. A soft white light started to glow from within the crystal. It grew brighter and brighter. The warmth spread through the cavern, melting the frost on the walls. The light shot upward, hitting the ceiling of the cave and reflecting off tiny minerals that sparkled like diamonds. The entire mountain seemed to hum with energy. Leo stepped back, shielding his eyes from the brilliance. The orb was now shining with a pure golden white light. It was alive again. The connection was restored. Leo felt a wave of exhaustion hit him. Restoring the light had taken a lot of energy. He sat down on the floor of the cave, leaning against the wall. Outside the cave, far below in the valley, the clouds began to break. The rain stopped, and a single beam of moonlight shone down on Oakhaven. The air felt fresher, cleaner. The first step of his journey was complete, but Leo knew this was only the beginning. There were 2 more places to go. He looked at the map. The next mark was in the eastern forest, near a mysterious lake. He would have to rest for a short while, eat some of his food, and then start moving again. The shadow might return if he wasn't careful, or it might attack the other locations while he was here. He could not waste time. Leo ate a piece of bread and drank some water. He checked his lantern. The blue flame was burning strong, perhaps even stronger than before. It seemed to feed on the success of restoring the orb. Leo walked down the mountain path as the sun rose higher in the sky. The air was fresh and cool, and the birds were singing loudly in the trees. It felt like a normal morning, but Leo knew it was not. He had just fought a dark shadow and brought light back to a hidden cave. His legs felt heavy from the long climb and the magic he had used, but his mind was sharp. He looked at the map in his hand. The red dot that showed his location was moving slowly toward the east. The next mark on the map was a large lake deep in the eastern forest. The Guardian had said this place held the second source of light. Leo knew he had to get there before the shadow could reach it. If the shadow took the lake, the water in Oakhaven might turn bad and the forests could die. He could not let that happen. He reached the bottom of the mountain and entered the thick woods. The trees here were different from the ones near the town. They were older and taller, with wide trunks covered in green moss. The ground was soft and springy, covered in layers of fallen leaves. Sunlight filtered through the branches in bright beams, making dust motes dance in the air. It was beautiful, but Leo did not stop to admire the view. He kept walking at a steady pace. Every now and then he checked his blue lantern. The flame inside was still burning brightly, casting a soft glow even in the daylight. It seemed to pulse gently, like a heartbeat, guiding him in the right direction. As he walked deeper into the forest, the sounds of the town faded away completely. There were no cars, no voices, only the rustling of leaves and the chirping of insects. After walking for 2 hours, Leo began to feel hungry again. He sat on a large rock by a small stream to eat the rest of his bread and cheese. The water in the stream was clear and cold. He cupped his hands and drank some. It tasted sweet and clean. While he ate, he thought about the people back in Oakhaven. He wondered if anyone noticed that the rain had stopped or that the air felt cleaner. Probably not. They were busy with their daily lives. The baker was making bread, the teacher was teaching lessons, and the farmer was checking his crops. They did not know that a young librarian was fighting a magical battle to keep their world safe. This thought made Leo feel a little lonely, but it also made him feel proud. He was their secret protector. Finished with his meal, Leo stood up and continued his journey. The path became narrower and harder to follow. Soon there was no path at all, and he had to push through thick bushes and climb over fallen logs. The map told him he was getting close to the lake. The air grew humid and warm. He could smell the scent of wet earth and blooming water lilies. Suddenly, the trees opened up, and Leo saw it. The lake was vast and round, with water so still it looked like a giant mirror. The surface reflected the blue sky and the white clouds perfectly. In the middle of the lake, on a small island, stood an ancient stone tower. It was old and crumbling, with vines growing all over its walls. According to the map, the source of light was inside that tower. Leo looked around for a boat, but there was none. The shore was muddy and steep. He realized he would have to swim. The water looked cold, but he did not hesitate. He took off his heavy coat and boots, wrapping them tightly in his backpack to keep them dry. He held the blue lantern high above his head with one hand. Amazingly, the flame did not go out even when he stepped into the water. He waded in until the water reached his waist. Then he started to swim. The water was chilly, sending shivers through his body, but the warmth from the lantern kept his hand comfortable. He swam steadily toward the island. The distance seemed longer than it looked from the shore, but finally his feet touched the muddy bottom of the island. He climbed onto the small patch of land and put his clothes back on. The stone tower loomed above him. The door was made of heavy wood bound with iron strips. It was slightly ajar, creaking softly in the breeze. Leo pushed it open and stepped inside. The interior was dark and damp. The air smelled of old stone and stagnant water. Unlike the cave in the mountains, this place felt sad and forgotten. Shadows clung to the corners of the room, darker and thicker than usual. Leo raised his lantern. The blue light pushed the shadows back, but they seemed to resist more strongly here. They writhed and twisted, trying to creep closer to him. Leo felt a sense of dread. This place felt dangerous. In the center of the tower room, there was a deep well. The map indicated that the light source was at the bottom of this well. Leo walked to the edge and looked down. It was very deep, and he could not see the bottom. All he could see was darkness. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the well. It was not the kind voice of the guardian. This voice was low and rough, like stones grinding together. "Go away. Leave this place. The light is gone forever," the voice whispered. Leo stepped back, surprised. "I am here to restore the light. The shadow has taken it, hasn't it?" The voice laughed, a harsh and ugly sound. "The shadow is strong here. It feeds on sadness and fear. This tower holds the memories of all the tears ever cried in Oakhaven. The shadow loves this place. You cannot win." Leo felt a chill run down his spine. The voice was trying to scare him. It was using his own fears against him. He thought about all the sad things that had happened in his life. He thought about times he felt alone or afraid. The shadows in the room grew larger, reaching out to him like black hands. The blue flame in his lantern flickered. For a moment, Leo doubted himself. Maybe the voice was right. Maybe the shadow was too strong. But then he remembered the glowing tree in the underground garden. He remembered how the light had returned to the mountain cave. He realized that the shadow fed of fear, but it could be defeated by hope. He had to change his thoughts. He had to focus on happy memories, on love and kindness. Leo closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He pushed the scary thoughts away. He thought about the laughter of children playing in the park. He thought about the warm hugs from his mother when he was small. He thought about the beauty of the sunrise he had seen earlier. He filled his heart with these good feelings. When he opened his eyes, the blue lantern flared with intense brightness. The light was so strong that it banished the shadows instantly. The dark corners of the room were filled with a soft blue glow. The rough voice from the well let out a scream of anger, and then fell silent. The heavy atmosphere in the room lifted. The air felt lighter and cleaner. "Now," Leo said firmly, "show me the light." He looked into the well again. This time he could see a faint glimmer at the very bottom. It was a small silver crystal, dull and covered in gray dust. Leo knew he could not climb down. The well was too deep and slippery. He needed another way. He looked around the room and saw an old bucket attached to a rope and a wheel mechanism on the wall. It looked rusty, but it might still work. Leo grabbed the rope and began to lower the bucket. It went slowly, creaking as it descended into the darkness. He kept lowering it until he heard a soft clink at the bottom. He had reached the crystal. Now came the hard part. He had to pull it up. The bucket felt extremely heavy, as if the shadow was trying to weigh it down. Leo pulled with all his strength. His muscles strained and his hands hurt from the rough rope. Sweat poured down his face. The bucket moved inch by inch. Halfway up, it stopped. Something was holding it back.
Leo could feel a cold force pulling on the rope from below. It was the shadow trying to keep the crystal trapped. "Let go!" Leo shouted. He planted his feet firmly on the stone floor and pulled harder. He thought of the people in Oakhaven who needed clean water and healthy forests. He thought of his duty as the keeper. With a mighty heave, he pulled the rope upward. The cold resistance broke, and the bucket shot up, swinging wildly. Leo caught the bucket just before it hit the side of the well. Inside lay the silver crystal. It was still gray and lifeless. Leo picked it up. It was cold as ice. He held his blue lantern close to it. Just like in the cave, he focused his good feelings into the crystal. He imagined the lake full of clear, sparkling water. He imagined fish swimming happily and birds drinking from the shore. He poured his hope and love into the stone. Slowly, the gray color began to fade. A soft blue light started to shine from within the crystal. It grew brighter and warmer. The crystal began to hum with energy. Suddenly, a beam of light shot out from the crystal, hitting the ceiling of the tower. The light reflected off the water in the well and spread throughout the room, turning the dark, damp space into a chamber of brilliance. The tower shook slightly as the magic restored itself. The vines outside the window seemed to grow greener and faster. The water in the lake outside turned from a murky gray to a brilliant, clear blue. Leo smiled, feeling exhausted but happy. He had done it again. 2 sources of light were restored. Only one remained. He placed the glowing crystal back into the bucket and lowered it gently to its resting place at the bottom of the well. Its light would now shine up through the water, purifying the lake and spreading life to the forest. Leo climbed out of the tower and walked back to the shore. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The reflection in the lake was breathtaking. Leo packed his things and began the walk back towards the edge of the forest. He was very tired now. His body ached and his eyes felt heavy, but he knew he could not stop for long. The last location was in the South Valley, in some ancient ruins. The map showed that it was a long way out, and the terrain would be difficult. The shadow would be expecting him now. It would be stronger and angrier. The final challenge would be the hardest of all. Leo tightened the straps of his backpack and gripped his lantern. The blue flame burned steady and true. He looked up at the first stars appearing in the twilight sky. "I am ready," he whispered to himself. He stepped on the path leading south, leaving the peaceful lake behind. The night was coming, and with it new dangers, but Leo was no longer afraid. He had faced the shadow twice and won. He trusted in.
The night was dark and quiet as Leo walked south. He had left the bright blue lake behind him, and now he was entering a part of the land he did not know well. The map in his pocket felt warm against his leg, guiding him forward. The southern valley was different from the mountains and the forest. Here, the ground was dry and rocky. There were few trees, only small bushes with thorny branches. The air was still, and there was no sound of birds or insects. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Leo held his blue lantern tight. Its light was the only thing that made him feel safe in this empty place. He was very tired. His legs ached from walking all day, and his eyes wanted to close. But he knew he could not stop. The last source of light was in the ancient ruins ahead, and the shadow was waiting for him there. As he walked, the wind began to blow. It was a cold wind that carried whispers. At first, Leo thought it was just the sound of the air moving through the rocks, but then he heard words. "Turn back," the wind whispered. "You are too weak. You will fail." Leo shook his head. He knew these were tricks of the shadow. It was trying to scare him before he even reached the ruins. He remembered the guardian's advice, "Trust your heart." He focused on the blue flame in his lantern. The light pushed away the cold wind and silenced the whispers. Leo walked faster. In the distance, he saw the silhouette of old stone walls against the starry sky. These were the ruins of an ancient city that people in Oakhaven only talked about in stories. No one went there because it was said to be cursed. Now Leo knew why. The shadow had made its home there. He reached the entrance of the ruins. It was a large archway made of cracked stone. Vines hung down like curtains, but these vines were black and dry. As soon as Leo stepped under the arch, the temperature dropped sharply. His breath came out in white clouds. The ground beneath his feet was covered in thick fog. This fog was not like the mist in the forest. It was heavy and gray, and it moved with a purpose. It swirled around Leo's ankles, trying to trip him. The blue lantern glowed brighter, creating a circle of safety around him, but the fog kept pressing against the edge of the light. Leo could feel the presence of the shadow here. It was stronger than in the cave or the tower. It felt angry and desperate. This was the last place, the most important one. If the shadow took this light, everything would be lost. Leo followed the map through the maze of broken walls and fallen pillars. The ruins were large and confusing. Paths led to dead ends, and stairs went nowhere. The map showed the way, but the shadow tried to trick him. Sometimes the path on the map seemed to move or change. Leo had to stop and close his eyes, trusting his inner feeling rather than just the paper. He remembered the layout of the underground garden. He imagined the connection between all three places, the mountain, the lake, and now the ruins. They were all part of one system. This thought helped him see the true path. He turned left instead of right, avoiding a deep pit that was hidden by the fog. He climbed over a pile of rubble instead of going through a dark tunnel. Step by step, he made his way to the center of the ruins. In the middle of the ancient city, there was a large open square. In the center of the square stood a tall pedestal similar to the one in the cave, but much larger. On top of it sat a golden sphere. This was the final source of light, but it was almost completely dark. A thick layer of black slime covered the sphere, pulsing like a living thing. The shadow had wrapped itself around the gold, choking the life out of it. The air around the pedestal was freezing. Leo could see dark shapes moving in the fog. They looked like wolves, but they were made of smoke and darkness. Their eyes glowed red. They circled around Leo, getting closer every second. They were guarding the sphere. Leo stopped and raised his lantern. "I am here to take back the light," he said. His voice sounded small in the vast ruins, but it was steady. The shadow wolves let out low growls. They did not speak, they only wanted to destroy. Suddenly they lunged at him. 3 of them jumped at once. Leo swung the lantern in a wide arc. The blue light hit the wolves and they shrieked. Where the light touched them, they dissolved into thin air. But more wolves appeared from the fog. There were too many of them. Leo backed up against a broken wall. He realized he could not fight them off forever. The lantern was strong, but the shadow was endless here. He needed to reach the sphere and cleanse it quickly. He looked at the pedestal. It was 10 feet away, but the pack of wolves stood between him and his goal. Leo knew he had to be brave. He could not wait for them to attack again. He took a deep breath and ran. He charged straight at the wolves, holding the lantern out in front of him like a shield. The blue light exploded outward, forming a wave of energy. The wolves scattered, shrieking as the light touched them. Leo ran through the gap they created. He stumbled over a rock, but kept going. He reached the pedestal and slammed his hand onto the black slime covering the golden sphere. The cold was unbearable. It felt like fire, but cold fire. The shadow fought back hard. It surged up Leo's arm, trying to freeze his whole body. Dark visions filled his mind. He saw Oakhaven in ruins. He saw his friends turning into shadows. He saw himself failing and disappearing into the darkness. The voice of the shadow roared in his ears. "Give up!" it screamed. "Nothing matters. Everything ends in darkness." Leo fell to his knees. His strength was leaving him. The blue lantern flickered and dimmed. The shadow wolves began to creep closer again, sensing his weakness. But then Leo remembered why he started this journey. He remembered the smell of the books in the library. He remembered the kindness of Mrs. Gable. He remembered the laughter of children in the park.
He remembered the beauty of the glowing tree underground. He realized that the shadow was wrong. Things did matter. Love mattered. Hope mattered. Life was precious. A surge of warmth rushed through his chest. It was not magic from the lantern. It was magic from his own heart. The blue flame in the lantern roared back to life, turning from blue to a brilliant gold-white color. The light was so intense that it blinded the shadows. "Get away!" Leo shouted. He poured all his love for his town into the sphere. The black slime began to crack. Steam rose from the golden surface. The shadows screamed in agony as the light broke through. The cracks spread wider until the entire layer of darkness shattered into a million pieces. The golden sphere burst into life, sending a beam of pure light straight up into the night sky. The beam was so bright that it could be seen from every corner of Oakhaven. The shadow wolves vanished instantly, unable to exist in such purity. The fog lifted, revealing the clear stars above. The ruins were no longer scary. They looked peaceful and ancient, bathed in golden light. Leo sat on the ground, breathing heavily. He was exhausted, but he felt a deep sense of peace. He had done it. All 3 lights were restored. The balance was saved. The Guardian's voice spoke in his mind, soft and proud. "Well done, Keeper. You have saved Oakhaven. The shadow is defeated, at least for a long time. The land will heal and your people will thrive." Leo smiled. He stood up slowly and looked at the golden sphere. It hummed with a happy sound. He knew his job here was finished. The walk back to town felt easier. The air was warm and sweet. The thorny bushes seemed to bloom with small flowers as he passed. When Leo finally reached the edge of Oakhaven, the sun was rising again. The hills were greener, the river sparkled, and the sky was a perfect blue. People were starting to wake up. The baker was opening his shop, and the farmer was leading his cows to the field. None of them knew what had happened. They did not know that a young librarian had walked through danger to save their world. And that was okay. Leo did not need them to know it. He was happy just knowing that they were safe. He walked to the library and unlocked the door. Inside, everything was just as he had left it. The dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Leo placed the silver key back in the box and hid the map in his notebook. He put the lantern on his desk. The flame had returned to its normal blue color, calm and steady. Leo sat in his chair and closed his eyes. He was ready to sleep, but first he wanted to write down everything that had happened. He opened his notebook and picked up his pen. He wrote about the secret garden, the mountain cave, the lake tower, and the ancient ruins. He wrote about the shadow and the power of love. He knew that someday someone else might need to read this story. Maybe one day another keeper would be needed, but for now, Oakhaven was safe. Leo finished writing and leaned back in his chair. He looked out the window at the quiet street. Life in Oakhaven would go on as usual. Days would be slow and nights would be quiet, but Leo knew that the world was full of magic and mystery. He was no longer just a boy who dreamed of adventures. He was a hero who had lived one. And though his
Leo woke up in the chair behind the library desk. The sun was shining brightly through the tall windows. It was the morning after his long journey. For a moment, he forgot where he was. He thought he was still in the southern ruins, fighting the shadow wolves. He looked at his hands. They were clean and smooth. There were no scratches or burns. He looked at the desk. The blue lantern sat there, looking like an old piece of metal. The flame inside was gone, but it still felt warm to the touch. Leo stretched his arms and stood up. His body felt stiff from sleeping in the chair, but he did not feel tired anymore. The magic from the 3 sacred places had healed him. He felt strong and full of energy. He walked to the window and looked out. The street was quiet. The rain from days before was gone. The puddles had dried up. The world looked fresh and new. He walked to the back room of the library to wash his face. The water in the sink was cold and clear. When he looked in the mirror,
He saw a change in his eyes. They looked brighter, like they held a secret light inside them. He smiled at his reflection. He was the same Leo who loved books and quiet days, but he was also different. He was the keeper of Oakhaven. He dried his face and walked back into the main room. He picked up the notebook where he had written his story. He closed it and put it in the bottom drawer of his desk. It was a secret that he must keep safe. Only he and the Guardian knew the truth. He locked the drawer and put the key in his pocket. He felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The burden was gone, but the responsibility remained. Leo unlocked the front door of the library. The bell above the door chimed softly. He stepped outside onto the cobblestone street. The town of Oakhaven looked different today. The colors seemed richer. The red bricks of the bakery looked deeper. The green leaves on the trees looked brighter. The sky was a perfect blue without a single cloud. People were walking on the street, going to their shops and schools. They were smiling and talking to each other. In the past, people in Oakhaven were often quiet and serious. Today, everyone seemed happy. They did not know why. They did not know that Leo had fought a dark shadow to bring them this peace. They just felt good. They felt safe. The air smelled like flowers and fresh bread. It was a wonderful smell. Leo walked to the bakery to buy breakfast. The baker, Mr. Henderson, was putting fresh bread on the shelf. When he saw Leo, he smiled widely. "Good morning, Leo," he said. "You look well today. Have you been on a holiday?" Leo shook his head. "No, just a few days off," he said. Mr. Henderson handed him a loaf of bread and a sweet bun. "On the house," the baker said. "You look like you need some energy." Leo thanked him and paid anyway. He walked down the street, eating the bun. It tasted sweeter than usual. He saw the teacher walking to the school. She waved at him. He saw the farmer driving his truck. The farmer honked the horn happily. The shadow was gone, and its sadness had left the town with it. The air felt clean and fresh. Even the dogs barking sounded happier. Leo waved back at everyone. He felt connected to all of them. They were his people. He had saved them. Leo went back to the library and started his work. He dusted the shelves. He organized the books. It was the same work he had done for years, but it felt new. He looked at the books differently now. When he touched a story about a knight, he remembered the cave in the mountain. When he touched a book about the ocean, he remembered the tower in the lake. When he touched a book about ancient history, he remembered the ruins in the south. The stories were not just words on paper anymore. They were real things that had happened to him. He was part of the stories now. Mrs. Gable came into the library around noon. She looked rested and happy. She had been away visiting her sister. She looked at Leo and tilted her head. "You seem different, Leo," she said kindly. "You stand taller. You look like a man who knows where he is going." Leo smiled. "I feel like I know where I am going," he said. Mrs. Gable nodded. "Good. This library is lucky to have you." She patted his shoulder and went to her office. Leo felt proud. The day passed slowly. The sun moved across the sky. Customers came and went. They borrowed books and returned them. Everything was normal. But Leo knew that underneath the normal world, there was magic. When the sun began to set, Leo locked the library door. He turned off the lights. The room became dark. He took the blue lantern from his desk. He walked to the back corner where the hidden door was. He put the silver key in his pocket. He did not need to search for the hole in the wall anymore. He knew exactly where it was. He put the key in the star-shaped lock. It turned smoothly. The door opened silently. Leo walked down the spiral staircase. The white stones glowed softly under his feet. He did not need a flashlight this time. The light from the lantern, even without a flame, lit the way. When he reached the bottom, the underground garden was beautiful. The glowing tree in the center was shining brighter than ever before. Its silver leaves rustled in a gentle breeze. The flowers were blooming in colors that did not exist above ground. There were blue roses and purple daisies. The streams of water sparkled like diamonds. The crystals on the ceiling twinkled like stars. It was a perfect place. Butterflies with wings made of light fluttered around the trees. They landed on Leo's shoulders and then flew away. Leo walked to the tree. He placed his hand on the warm bark. He said, "I am back," softly. The voice of the guardian spoke from the air. It sounded happy. "Welcome home, Keeper," it said. "You have done well. The 3 lights are burning strong. The shadow has been pushed back into the deep earth. It will not return for many years." Leo felt relieved. "Will I have to do it again?" he asked. The guardian chuckled. "One day, perhaps. The world is old and shadows always come back eventually. But for now, you have bought peace for your people. Your job is to watch and wait. Keep the lantern close. Keep your heart open. If the light ever fades, you will know." Leo understood. He was not just a librarian. He was a guardian of the light. Leo walked around the garden one more time. He looked at the carvings on the walls. They seemed to move slightly, telling stories of past keepers. He saw images of men and women who had done what he did. They had fought darkness to protect their homes. He was part of a long line of heroes. He did not feel small anymore. He felt connected to something big. He took a deep breath of the sweet air. He knew he had to go back up. His life was above ground, among the people he loved. He could not live in the garden forever. He said goodbye to the guardian and walked back to the stairs. He climbed up to the library. He closed the secret door and locked it. He put the key away. He sat in his chair and looked at the lantern. He did not need to hide it anymore. It was just a part of his life now. He picked up a book from the desk. It was a story about a faraway land. He opened the first page and began to read. The words flowed into his mind. He imagined the places described in the book. He wondered if those places were real too. He wondered if there were other keepers in other towns. He smiled. The world was full of mysteries. Outside, the night fell over Oakhaven. The streetlights turned on. The windows of the houses glowed with warm yellow light. People were eating dinner with their families. They were safe. They were happy. Leo watched them from the window. He took a sip of his tea. He was tired, but it was a good tired. He had saved his home. He had protected his friends. He put the book down and rested his hands on his heart. He closed his eyes and listened to the silence of the town. It was a peaceful silence. It was the sound of safety. Leo knew that tomorrow would be just like today, quiet and simple. But he knew the truth. He knew that magic was real. He knew that courage mattered. And he knew that as long as he held the light, Oakhaven would never fall into darkness. He was ready for whatever came next. He was the keeper. And this was his story.